Good morning. It's nice to see some of you joining us. Hopefully the college event is just wrapping up. We'll get started in a couple minutes. If you look, you should be in the event for the history department at Cal Poly. If that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. Great to see more and more of you coming online. Good morning. The chat function is on. Everyone's on mute right now. But if you have questions, please don't hesitate to use the chat as we're waiting for everyone else to join us. Oops. Did any of you just go to the college event? Thumbs up if you did. Okay, they must be done. They sometimes run a bit late, so I wasn't sure. I think we'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get started. If you did miss it, I think it's recorded so you can view it later. It looks like things have kind of slowed down, so why don't we get started since it's a little past 11:30. First of all, welcome. My name is Kate Murphy. I'm the chair of the history department here at Cal Poly. And on behalf of my colleagues, the history faculty, I am delighted to welcome you to join us this morning to our first ever virtual open house. This is obviously a little different than what any of us had planned, but I'm so happy that so many of you were able to join us this morning. I wanted to start by actually congratulating you on your admission to Cal Poly, to sort of back up a step. It's a truly significant accomplishment, and I think it's one that in a normal year can get overlooked because there's so much stress and focus on deciding which offer to accept. But I think even in particular this year, which is anything but normal, it's important to just savor that moment. But now to move on to sort of thinking about the history department at Cal Poly. My plan for today is to try to give you some information to inform your decision. I'll provide you with an overview of the program, and then the second half of our time will be open for Q&A. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please use the chat to post those, and we will get to those in the second half of our time. I'm very happy and we're lucky that we have joining us today one of our graduates of our program, Courtney Thompson, who did her bachelor's in the history department and then just a couple weeks ago defended her master's thesis. So she's here running the chat for me, and also if there's a question that a student would have a better perspective on, she's here as well. Do you want to just say hi and wave, Courtney?
Yeah, hey guys. Nice to see you.
I also wanted to point out that we have available for you an information packet. That kind of gets into more detail than I'm going to go into today. It has kind of gets details that maybe would be a little bit too much in the weeds for a session like this. So things like if you got a 4 on the English AP exam versus a 5, how many units of credit do you get at Cal Poly? And you can access that document either using the Teeny URL, which is here on the slide and also in the chat, or the QR code. And I'll have the same information on my last slide if you don't have time to do it now. It also includes things like the flow charts to show how you might navigate the major, either if you're here for 4 years or if you're a transfer student for 2. So there's a lot of good information there. If you do it correctly, that should be the first page that you see. It's a 13-page PDF. I highly recommend taking a look at it either now as we're talking or as you get, before you leave today, download it and take a look later. Um, so I wanted to start by answering a question that I often get asked, which is what's unique about the history major at Cal Poly? And one of the things that I think of as being really unique about our program is that it's sort of the best of both worlds. It's got some elements that are similar to what you might expect about a small liberal arts school, but it also has the resources of a larger university. So you have the kind of sense of community within the department. We know our majors as faculty. I sometimes will talk about my big class, which is the US survey that I teach. Uh, at Cal Poly, my big class is 48 students. I know every single one of my students named by the end of the second week. If I was teaching that class at Berkeley, it would have hundreds of students, possibly 500 students in it. So it's a very different scale. As a result, faculty are invested in our students, and particularly in our majors from the very beginning, particularly since students declare their majors from the very beginning. So there are 26 faculty history who are invested in history majors from the moment you walk on campus. But in terms of the kind of resources of a larger university, one of them is our faculty. So you'll be taught by world-class faculty. All of our classes are taught by PhDs. They're not taught by graduate students. These are people who are recognized in their fields. You can see here their specialties, but also in some cases their books, their awards. These are people who could teach anywhere, but teach here because they're passionate about working with undergraduates. They want to teach undergraduates, they want to mentor undergraduates. And so students here have an opportunity to work closely with their faculty. There's a lot of one-on-one mentorship. Students work as research assistants. Students, through their senior project, takes the form here of a one-on-one independent study with a faculty member. And these kinds of relationships, I think, are more reminiscent of what you'd expect from a small liberal arts school, but you're able to do them at a large school where you also have access to the range of resources that a 22,000 person university would have access to. So the faculty, I think, are one of the things that are unique about the program and that kind of make the experience here a combination of what you might expect at a bigger place along with what you might expect at a larger university as well. Another question that I frequently get asked is, does learn by doing happen in the history department? My answer is, of course, absolutely. It's critical not just to Cal Poly in general, but to what we do in the history department as well. Sorry, I have some problems with my slides. All right. So what does Learn by Doing look like in the history department? One of the formats that it takes is our well-established internship program. Students are able to earn 400 level course credit through our internship program. This is something Courtney could certainly speak to since she made well use of this program. And the department has a wide range of community partners. A longer list is available in the information packet. But to just give you a couple of examples, we have some that are kind of obvious, things that you'd think we'd have relationships with. So history related ones, the history museums in the county, for example, like the Morro Bay Maritime History Museum and the SLO History Center, as well as on campus university archives and special collections. But we also have less obvious opportunities. So we partner with local nonprofits like the Jewish Community Center. We partner with the city government. Working for state or local government is a wonderful career path and one that I always encourage students to consider, and an internship with the city is one way to think about that. We also have internships that are really designed for those students who want to go to law school. So we have relationships with the DA's office and with the county court system. And our most recent addition, one that Courtney actually, the very first student to ever get to experience, is our relationship with Hearst Castle. And that is actually linked to an endowment so that the students' travel expenses are covered, as well as a small stipend. So these are the kinds of opportunities that people have available to learn by doing in the history department through the internship program. But it also takes the format of original research. So we've built in original research opportunities throughout the curriculum. This is everything from your very first quarter in History 100 to your senior project. So the senior project typically is a research paper of about 35 pages of a topic of your choice that you work on over the course of 2 quarters, one-on-one with a faculty member. But it also can be a creative alternative. So right now I have a student doing historical fiction. I've had students do exhibits. I had a wonderful exhibit on the history of wedding dresses. I had a couple podcasts last year, students who worked on high school curriculum development. I have a student right now who's developing a game as a way of teaching the history of the witch trials in Europe. So there's a wide range of things that people do. Another way that people learn by doing in the history department is through the forum, which is our student-run journal of research. So students do all the editing and all the writing. We partner with students in the graphic communication department to do the layout and the artwork. Normally we hand out copies, but it's also all available online. So all the back issues are available at the website listed there, Digital Commons at calpoly.edu. Digital Commons is through the library, also post-faculty research if you wanted to check that out as well. Another kind of way that we learn by doing in the history department is from the very first quarter you're on campus in a class called History 100. It's not the most creatively named class, but it is a class that I think has a lot going for it. I'm biased because I teach the majority of the sections. I'll be teaching 2 of the 4 sections this fall. But we do 2 major learn by doing projects in that class, in addition to the kind of typical orientation stuff you'd think you'd do in a class like that. The first is based on historical research. So students in that class do an original research project. In my classes, we'll focus on Cal Poly during the 1960s and 70s, and you'll pick some aspect of life in the 60s or 70s and use the archives available on campus through university archives to research it. So that might be yearbooks, it might be old newspapers, it could be ephemera. There's a great collection of old posters from like music and other shows that were on campus. People have done great work using ads in newspapers. There's just a range of things. This is again something Courtney could speak to because she also worked in the university archives. So the students do that project as kind of a history research experience. The other portion of that class is what's called an informational interview with alums. Career Services says that one of the best ways to build your professional network is through these things called informational interviews. They say that 70% of first jobs come through your professional network. And while some of us might have professional networks already, most people don't coming out of college. And so this is a way to start to build that from the very beginning of your time in college. But we also make it kind of low stakes. So in this class, you do it in a small group, and there are alums who've already told me that they want to participate. So you know that they're going to say yes. And we partner with Career Services and have a couple of class sessions where they kind of get you ready to do this project. And then in small groups, you interview alums working in a range of careers. So people working at Facebook and Amazon or Wells Fargo. Last year, we had somebody who's working as a winemaker who's one of our alums, talking about the varied ways in which they use their history major and kind of offering advice as to what they wish they had done or how they could make better use of their time while they were a major at Cal Poly. And then students come and share that with the group and use that to do the final project in the class, which is a final paper that's sort of a plan. What are you going to do with the rest of the time you have left at Cal Poly? How are you going to make the best use of it? What minors do you want to pursue, or what classes do you want to take, or what internships do you want to experience? So those are all examples of how we do learn by doing in the history department. As I mentioned, that plan often involves minoring. As you can see here, I think you can major in history and minor in pretty much anything because history is one of the most flexible majors at the whole university. Cal Poly has this reputation of being an incredibly rigid curriculum with high unit majors and you can't take electives. That's all really true if you're an engineer. It's not at all true if you're a history major. Our major breaks down basically into thirds. So if you looked at the curriculum sheet on the packet, a degree from a quarter system university requires 180 units, and our major breaks into roughly thirds. About 60 units are GE, about 60 units are in the major, and then about 60 units are these 2 categories that together function as electives. They're just basically upper division versus lower division electives. And since there's 57 units in that elective section, it's really easy to acquire a minor. It's actually pretty easier to do 2, because a minor is typically 24 units. It's capped at 30 units. And typically a class in a minor, a couple of classes in a minor might also double count in GE or double count in the major. So we at graduation every year have students with double minors and often students with triple minors. And so I really encourage students to think about the ways in which they can pick a minor that complements what they're learning in the history major, but also kind of complements their interests. And you can see from this slide that there are a lot to choose from at Cal Poly. I put in bold the ones that I most frequently see history majors pursue, but of course, any of them would be things to think about depending on what your future plans are. That flexibility not only enables students to minor or to double major, another thing I see a lot, but also to think about some of these other things. So students often study abroad. Many of the faculty in the history department are actively involved in study abroad programs. So this particular photo was taken by Dr. Paul Hilpold, who was for many years the resident director in the Cal Poly in Spain program. One of my colleagues, Dr. Trice, got back from Australia just a couple weeks ago, where he was teaching in Cal Poly's program. I've taught in the London program. So we're all pretty involved in it, and we do everything possible to make it easy for students who want to go abroad to make sure they get to use that credit towards the degree. It also makes it easier for students to graduate early if that's something you're looking to do. I mentioned I teach History 100. I'm always amazed when I get the roll at the beginning of the quarter, how many of these students who I know are living in the freshman dorms are listed on the roll as sophomores or even juniors. If that's you, if you have a lot of AP credits or credits from other ways, then you can really think about graduating a quarter or two early because of the flexibility of the major. And then you also have the ability, if you want to do more than one internship, it's possible to get course credit for up to 3 internships, and the flexibility of the major makes that possible. The varied experiences that students have throughout our program, I think, really help them when they begin to search for a job after graduation. Faculty in the department are really committed to helping students find their path after graduation. And for some of them, that's going to mean grad school right away. Some will work for a while and then go to grad school, and some will go right to work and do that for their entire career. But faculty are really committed to helping students and helping recent alums who come back and ask for that kind of help. Our curriculum is very much focused on skills. Of course, there's content and historical facts are part of it, but it's really based on developing skills that we think are really important to the history major, but also just generally to your careers going forward. So that's things like writing clearly, oral communication, research, analysis, and synthesis, being able to really understand and analyze a complex problem, to understand diverse cultures and their histories. All of these things, I think, are transferable skills that will help you no matter what career you decide to focus on. The project I described in History 100 is one example of our commitment to thinking about skills, but also thinking about careers. Another is the internship program. A recent survey showed that 94% of employers said they're more likely to hire a recent college graduate who had interned somewhere. 60% said much more likely. So it's really something valuable to think about if it makes sense for your particular situation. Employers also talk about the importance of a senior project or having completed a major project, and senior project certainly counts for that. 87% of them said they'd be more likely to hire someone who had done something like that. And so we also ask students when they're doing their senior project to think about the topic. Is there a way that their topic might fit with their particular career goals? We've had students who want to teach high school develop curriculum, or students who want to apply to Teach for America, do a project on the history of Teach for America. We also encourage not just minoring, but as I mentioned, strategic minoring, thinking about the kinds of skills that you're building in the history major and thinking about minors that might complement that. So I always encourage students to think about minors in things like entrepreneurship, because it's a way to get business classes. It's a little easier than getting into the regular business classes. Those classes are really impacted, but the entrepreneurship minors are much easier to get into those classes. Or economics is another great one, GIS, law and society if you want to go to law school. There's a range, but I think it's helpful to kind of think about it strategically when picking a minor. The department also hosts career events. So we have one, even though we're in this virtual environment, we're doing one in 2 weeks, bringing back some alums to talk about their careers. And that panel, and much of what we do is focused on alums who didn't pursue a teaching career, because I think most of you kind of know what a high school teacher does. You've spent a lot of time with them recently. And the other reason we don't focus on it in all this kind of career programming is that if that's what you want to do, if you want to teach high school or middle school, the person you need to talk to happens to be in our department, and that's Dr. Joel Orth. So for those of you interested in teaching social sciences, the person for the whole university who coordinates that program, it happens to be in the history department. And so we just sort of send everyone to him who is interested in kind of that path. And we focus on sort of everyone else, which is the majority of students typically. The last thing I wanted to just give you a sense for is just, I often tell students who come to see me that the kind of blessing and the curse of the history major is you can do kind of anything with it. That's wonderful, but also overwhelming at times. And I think you can get a sense for that range in just the slide here, which are just the industries that some of our recent alums are working in. And I think what helps to explain the diversity of industries represented here is that focus on skills, and also this idea that the liberal arts in general trains students how to learn. And in times of uncertainty, which this certainly is, being adaptable and being able to apply your skills to different situations is a better strategic plan, I think, than training really narrowly. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we emphasize skill development so much. I did want to make sure that I left plenty of time today for questions, so I'll stop there. Like I mentioned at the beginning, for those of you who joined us late, there's an information packet with some more nuts and bolts information about the department available at the URL linked at the bottom of the page, or you can use the QR code. It's also available in the chat. And if you have questions you wanted to ask, the chat's the best way to do so. Let's switch over to that now and see if we have some questions. Let me just switch over here. I got a question in the chat already asking, are there internships for students who are interested in teaching? Yes, there are. There are a number of internships where education is part of it. So for example, there's a couple where you'll be developing curriculum for, say, a local historic site, or working with school groups to any kind of history museum, that kind of thing. We don't have students interning in schools themselves, but usually at historical sites, partnering with schools. Great question. What other questions are there from the group that I can answer? So the question is, can you minor in something outside of the liberal arts? Absolutely. It's less common, not because it's not possible, but just because liberal arts students, I think, tend to, are more likely to want to minor in something kind of similar. So we do see students minoring in things like entrepreneurship is an example that's located in the business college. I have a senior project student right now whose minor is in biology. So there's a range of things that people minor in. What other questions are there? Well, maybe what people are thinking of questions, Courtney, is there anything that I didn't touch on that you think I should have mentioned about the program, or that kind of strikes you as distinctive about the major at Cal Poly compared to either programs elsewhere or other majors at the school?
I think what's nice about, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think what's nice about the Cal Poly History program is it's not super specific in its curriculum, so you can make it what you want it to be. So I went down a pathway in archival science, which wasn't traditional to the history department, but was very easy to do given all of the internships that are available. So you definitely can make it what you need it to be.
That's a great point. One of the questions I do frequently get asked, I hadn't thought of, is it the type of program where students have to pick a concentration? And so bigger programs, like if you were to go to UCLA, you'd have a concentration within the major. We don't, in part because of our size. We've got 25 faculty, about 250 majors. But we also don't because we want to maintain that flexibility that Courtney's talking about. So people are able to kind of tailor their experiences. In Courtney's case, she was able to combine a couple classes that dealt with it, a bunch of internships, and then work experience on campus in university archives to kind of give her the experiences that she was looking for to pursue her interest in archival sciences. Other students have their passions that are somewhere else. So they might take every class on Asian history that they can get, or they might be really interested in the 19th century and take everything on that and pick a senior project around that. Or students sometimes are interested in combining it with their minor. So maybe they're minoring in Latin American studies, and they find ways to kind of specialize through the classes that they pick. And then ultimately through the senior project, which is completely at your discretion. It's a great way to really personalize your experience. All right, so there's a question here about liberal arts freshmen. So they don't all have to live in the same dorm, but there is, and Courtney, jump in if I get this wrong, but there is a designated CLA, College of Liberal Arts dorm every year. It's usually one of the red bricks. And a lot of our students seem to live there. I had a big group last year when I was teaching History 100 who all lived in the same dorm. Is there anything I'm leaving out, Courtney, on that?
I don't think so. And I think now with the new residence halls, there's more interspersing of majors.
So the name of the person in the history department who specializes in helping students who want to be a high school or middle school teacher is Dr. Joel Orth. Courtney, could you type his name in the chat for anybody who wanted more information on that? We have a packet of information available about the social science credential program. If you're interested, you're welcome to email me and I can email it to you. My email is ksmurphy@calpoly.edu, but it's Dr. Joel Orth is the person who works with the credential program. Let's see. How many students are history majors? Is it a smaller or bigger department in the CLA? I would say it's a medium-sized department. So there are 250 majors. We have about 25 faculty members. The smaller departments in the CLA have typically like 7 or 8 faculty members, but then the really big ones would be something like psychology, which might have, oh gosh, they probably have a few, probably twice as many majors as us, because they also have 2 majors. They have psychology and child development. Let's see. The law and society minor is in the political science department, so I don't know the details on it, but I'm sure if you went to the political science department, you could find information about the curriculum there. It is a really popular one among history majors, and so it's one that I frequently see on people's transcripts, but we don't actually run the program. Let's see. So AP credits would count, if you're interested in how AP credits would count, I would take a look at the handout in the packet. The department doesn't determine how things are counted. It's the registrar's office. So I'm not sure of the details of particular things beyond what's in that chart. But they do usually end up counting in a kind of mix of GE and major, depending on what the class is. And because we're on the quarter system, there's sometimes these quirks where you'll get like 4.5 units for a class. And so like the 4 units will count towards the major and the half units will count towards electives. And then eventually you get enough half units and they add up to something. Let's see. There's a question here about incorporating some teaching credential programs into their undergraduate curriculum. So there's some, you can do that to some degree, but some of it is kind of mandated by the state in terms of how much you can and can't do. The credential program it's a credential, right? It's something that you do after you finish your degree. It's not technically a degree itself, which means that if you were to do a master's degree after doing the credential, you can actually count some of the credential classes towards the master's degree. So as Courtney probably can think of some people who are in the master's program with her who did this, where they did the credential first, and then they were able to shave a quarter or more off the master's in history. That can be a good option because if you have a master's degree, your starting salary is higher if you're a public school teacher or a private school teacher. So that's a pretty popular option that we see a lot where they do the credential first and then the master's. In terms of combining the credential with the undergraduate, there's a few prereqs to the credential program that people combine. So there's a couple classes in the School of Ed, and I think there's something random like CPR that's required that people take. I think CPR counts as a PE or something. So people will take those classes while an undergraduate. And one of those classes involves quite a bit of observation works, a certain number of hours of kind of observing elementary school teachers. So people will take those kinds of classes. It's easier. The other option in terms of combining is sometimes students will be able to combine the master's degree with the undergraduate, which I think, Courtney, you did that to some degree, right? We are able, because of the flexibility and because students come in with so many units, if you take sort of extra 400 level classes beyond what's required for the history degree, and then do our master's program, we can retroactively count the extra classes towards the master's degree up to a certain number of units. And so that also allows people to get the master's degree more quickly. So we're probably eventually going to have an official blended program where it's an MA BA combo, but right now we do it kind of unofficially through these kind of mechanisms. So the question is, are there minors within the history department? There are 2 within the history department. The history minor, which a history major can't do since you're already doing a history major. And there's a minor in Asian studies. But then most of the minors that our majors do are outside of the department. And we really encourage them to go outside the department for the minors to get kind of different kinds of experiences. What other kinds of questions could I address for folks? So there's a question about involving ourselves with the History Journal. Oh, that's a great question. So in terms of sort of student groups within the department, one of them is the student journal, which is called, again, the Forum, which you can find at digitalcommons.edu/forum, like the Forum of Rome. So you can get involved early on. I've had a number of students at this point who actually had the paper that they wrote for History 100. So the paper they wrote, their very first quarter, get published in that journal. And so you can get involved your very first year as a writer for the journal. And then students often go on to become active as editors. So the typical path would be you could be an editor, and then from the kind of returning editors and executive editors chosen for the subsequent year. And so that's one group that kind of works within the department. And then there's also what functions as kind of the history club is called Phi Alpha Theta, which is the Honor Society for History. But it also functions as a general club. So while you have to meet certain requirements to be an official member of it as an honor society, anybody can go to their events. So they organize trips to Hearst Castle. They've organized movie nights to watch historical movies and pull them apart about how terrible they are. They have events during the day, like a pizza lunch. They do all sorts of different things. So you can get involved in that from the very beginning as well, even though you can't officially join until you've taken a certain number of classes. Did I leave anything out about the groups on campus, Courtney? I mean, in the department. Okay, great. Okay, so the question is, where can you find information about the study abroad program? You want to go to the Cal Poly's International Center. The International Center does a bunch of different things, but one of the things they do, oh, perfect. Thank you, Courtney. She had that link at the ready. I'm impressed. One of the things they do is help students who want to study abroad. And so you have the option to do the programs that I mentioned that our own faculty have taught in. Those are Cal Poly programs. So there's Cal Poly in Spain and Cal Poly in London, Cal Poly in Thailand. Those are Cal Poly classes taught by Cal Poly faculty with Cal Poly students. The advantage of that is that they're Cal Poly classes, so everything transfers very easily. There's no transferring actually because they're internal classes. And the logistics, I think, are a little easier because it's all kind of taken care of. But some people don't want that experience. Some people very much want the experience of being on their own in Prague, or they want to go, and not know anyone else in Tokyo or whatever. And so there are all sorts of different options through different partnerships. Some of them are through the CSU. Some of them are just through other universities. Pretty much any country you can imagine, there are programs available for people to go. And then there's a question about double majoring. If you know coming in you want to double major, it's not difficult at all. I meet with a lot, usually I would say 2 or 3 freshmen a year who are interested, but overwhelming odds, political science is the most common thing to double major in. And it's something that I'm very familiar with, and we have very worked out how well that works. It's quite easy to do. But we also have students who double major. I would say the next most common ones would be English, and I just met with someone yesterday about doing it with philosophy. As long as it's early, we can easily plot out how you use your electives, but also use your GE. So if you're going to double major with philosophy, say, you would take your GE classes that you have to take either English or a philosophy class anyway. So if you take it as a philosophy class, then it's double counting for you towards the double major and towards GE. And there are another resource I haven't mentioned that is really wonderful are the CLA advisors. And so these are a group of professional advisors who work for the college. Each college has their own, who their full-time job is meeting with students and helping them plan out how to do certain things. So they'll sit down with you if you want to go abroad and plan out what will count as what when you come back. Or if you want a double major in particular, you'd want to meet with them, and they'll sit down. You can have a half an hour appointment and they'll pull out a chart and write out for you exactly how do you double major in whatever you're interested in with history, and how many, what classes you need to take what quarter, and showing you, does it take any extra time? And if you're doing it as a freshman, it won't take any extra time. And Courtney very helpfully just posted the link to their website as well. They're also great for those of you who are transfer students. They're really wonderful to work with, particularly that first quarter as you're trying to figure out, did you get the right credit for things that you took? Sometimes mistakes are made when classes are transferring in. So if you look on your degree progress report and you think, I've taken US history, why does it say I need to take it? Those are the people that you want to sit down with, and they'll help you make sure that you have everything that you're getting credit for the way that it should be getting credit, and that you can get through the program efficiently. Our program is such that there's no reason why a transfer student can't graduate in 2 years, or a freshman in 4. And I think particularly for transfer students, they really go above and beyond to work with them in that fall quarter to make sure that they have a plan so that they know exactly what they need to take which quarter. So the question is that someone has friends in the School of Business and Architecture saying classes are challenging, keeps them busy. Is that true for history or sociology majors? That's my sense, although Courtney probably can answer that better than I can, because I obviously haven't taken our classes.
Yeah, so I think that the most challenging thing is the quarter system that Cal Poly is on, and you can probably speak to that more too. It's just very fast-paced. So it's a lot of curriculum in 10 weeks. That's not to say that you can't have a social life, you can't see friends, you won't have time, but you will be kept busy.
Yeah, that's a good point. That 10-week quarter can be a real adjustment. I think it's sometimes hardest for transfer students who are coming from a 17 or 18-week semester to then jump to a 10-week quarter. That can be a pretty brutal adjustment. It's tough for new faculty too, who come from a semester system. Are there other questions that we can answer for you? So it looks like we've got about 20 minutes left, but I'm not seeing any more questions. I just want to give everyone a couple more minutes to see if you have any questions before we sign off. If you do have questions, let me just pull this up. I am having office hours specifically for admitted students. So if you have questions that kind of come to you later, sorry that formatting on that's a little weird, but you can see the link, the Zoom link is there at the bottom. So it'll be on Wednesday from 10 to 11. The idea was primarily for those students who couldn't come today, but you're welcome to come if you sort of think of a question later that you wanted to ask, to just drop by on Wednesday and ask whatever questions you have. So in terms of resources for transfer students, there's a couple of things. I just got a question in the chat. Transfer students, the curriculum sheet that's in the curriculum packet that we put in the chat, sorry, we put the information packet that includes the curriculum sheet. That document will apply whether you're a transfer student or a freshman. So this is the document right here. You should be seeing it. And then if you scroll through, this is the curriculum sheet that I mentioned. It's this big, ugly chart that shows you all of the classes that you need to take. In the olden days, this is what was used to determine whether you graduate. Now there's something on students' portals called the Degree Progress Report that sort of does this electronically and fills it out for you to say whether or not, as a transfer student, did you get credit for Western Civ, for example. For those of you who are freshmen, if you take European AP, you'll probably get credit for 111, for example. So that's one resource, but I think what people usually find more useful are these flow charts. So this is the one for freshmen, and this is the one for transfers, which shows you kind of the typical kind of breakdown of classes. So there's only 5 classes in the major that need to be taken in a particular sequence. If you're a freshman, it's easy peasy to do it in 4 years. If you're a transfer, 5 classes in 6 quarters is totally doable, but you do need to kind of stay on track. So you'd want to take History 100 in fall. Then you take 303, which is our research methodology class. That class is capped at 15. I sometimes call it History Boot Camp. It's where you really learn how to write research papers like a historian. And you typically end up taking it with a lot of the same students you took 100 with. So we have a transfer designated class for History 100. And then most of you would end up in the same section of 303 in winter, and then you'd move together into 304. So you really form a cohort. There's special orientations in the summer for transfer students. I think they're called transfer days, at least they used to be called. And so that's where we'll go over exactly what classes you need to be taking as a transfer student. But you can see here that it's a mix of upper division history classes and upper division GE in the 2 years that you'd be here. It depends on kind of what exactly you come in with credit for, but that's kind of where you'd want to look. In terms of other resources for transfer students, there's now, this year we opened a transfer center. So it's a resource on campus specifically for transfer students that provide a range of resources. And then of course the CLA advisors are the best people if you have specific questions about curriculum. Is there anything I'm leaving out, Courtney, when it comes to transfer students? Okay, great. So the question is, how large would you say Cal Poly's resources are that can be used for research during the 4 years? It depends what you mean by resources. One of the things that you'd have available to you is through the department, not through the university as a whole. And that's a pot of money that we call the donors grants, that's funded by donors, that students use to do a range of things that enhance their education. So that could mean presenting at a conference. It could mean buying supplies for a research project or traveling to an archive. We had a student go to Mississippi recently to do oral histories of people involved in one aspect of the civil rights movement. So you can apply for those grants. There are also some grants within the university and within the college, although most of those resources, there's a couple that students can apply for, but most of them are things that faculty can apply for to have students work with them. The donors grants are unusual, the department set up because there's something that students can apply for directly. Let's see, the question is interning during the summer. It is possible to intern during your first summer. I'm assuming by first summer we mean the summer between your first and second year. That's possible. If you look at the course description, it makes it seem like it's not possible because it says you need to have taken 303 to do an internship. That's something that we haven't really enforced in recent years, so people are able to take the internship class earlier. It's just that it's a little harder to get a slot. It's a competitive process. In addition to the internships that we arranged, there's always the opportunity for you to do an internship that you arranged. So for example, we've had students do internships in their hometown on a wide range of things. Everything from people working for the Justice Department, for people at the Nixon Library, to local history museums. So those are always an opportunity. And if you want to get course credit, we can work with you on that. There are some sort of academic requirements. If you want course credit, you have to read a certain number of pages and write a certain number of pages. But we also have people who do internships and don't want to get course credit because they, for whatever, they've already taken it too many times, or they don't want to write the paper, or they just want the experience. And that's also fine, and we'll work with you. We have 2 faculty members who are the primary points of contact for the internship program. And the primary person is Dr. Molly Loberg, who's the internship coordinator. And then there's a couple of internships that one of our other faculty members oversees. So she's someone who would work with you on finding those opportunities. And then also she's the person who teaches the class that you get the course credit through. And typically, in terms of the questions also about sort of how do you apply, typically the applications are due the previous quarter. So if you wanted to intern in say winter quarter, the applications are due at the end of fall quarter, so that there's plenty of time for the whole process, because the process also involves an interview and a written application. So it can take a little bit of time, and we want everything set up so that the internship starts that very first day of classes. Yeah, Courtney, if you could put the 2 professors in the chat, that'd be great. And I would say of the 2 that she's going to put, The person who's the primary internship coordinator is Dr. Molly Loberg. Dr. Andrew Morris does a couple of the internship programs, but he really just does a few that he has particular connections to. Dr. Loberg is the primary person who handles the internship program. All right, any other questions I can answer either about the program, or if you have questions about Cal Poly or about San Luis, we're happy to answer those as well. And I know this is kind of might be a stranger way of making a decision if you haven't actually been to San Luis yet. I was talking to some students and parents earlier in the week who were asking me to describe for them what SLO is like, because they need to make the decision without ever coming here, which is an extra challenge. Any other questions oh, here's one. Yes, Cal Poly does have resources for helping with papers, underutilized resources that I'm always asking students to use. So there's the Writing and Rhetoric Center, which will provide proofing services, but also just kind of writing tutorial help. Somebody will sit down and talk with you about, well, your thesis isn't clear, or maybe the organization could be better, and they're trained. They're typically students in English or other related majors who are trained as writing tutors, and student fees go towards paying for it. So I'm always telling students there's no reason not to use it. I mean, it really makes a huge difference. Let's see. The Quarter Plus program is a great program if that's something that makes sense for you. The Quarter Plus program allows you to get essentially a quarter worth of units right before classes start. One of the things people like about it is that you get to move into your dorms early and avoid the craziness of move-in day, which is kind of a good crazy, but it is kind of crazy. But you also are able to get some GE classes out of the way. I think that program is particularly valuable for those majors we were talking about that aren't flexible, like some of the engineering, but they can be really useful for the history major too. You can take things like, the speech class that's required and those kinds of things. I don't think it's because the major is so flexible, it's not as advantageous in the history major as it might be in another major. So I don't think you should feel like you're missing out if you don't do it. It doesn't make as big of a difference for history majors, but it can be a good program if that's something that makes sense for you. My understanding is the plan is still for it to be in person, but everything is still evolving. There's a question about foreign language. Yes, that's a great question. The program does require a foreign language, so you're required to have up to an intermediate level of a foreign language, and we do mean a foreign language, so sign language doesn't count. And intermediate is defined as the 201 level. So if you're taking a language currently, you would take a test when you get here to determine what level you'd place into. Or if you've taken an AP exam, that can be used in lieu of the test. We have a growing number of students who test out of it and never actually take it at Cal Poly, particularly those of you who are going to have AP credit for it. If you wanted to start a new language, it works out to 4 quarters. So you would take, let's say you took Spanish in high school and you just really want to take Chinese, or you really want to take Italian. Your freshman year or your first year here, if you're transferring your junior year, you would take 101, then 102, then 103, and then that fall you take 201. So for whatever reason, it jumps from 103 to 201. So it's really just 4 quarters. And the rough rule of thumb is 1 year of high school equals 1 quarter of college. So if you've taken French for 3 years, you'll probably end up taking 201. And I think the test actually is only for Spanish and something else, maybe French. And so first, like if you took German, they just have you self-place based on how many years of high school you took. I do not know if the military science minor is open to everyone or just the ROTC student or ROTC students. You would have to look that up. I'm not sure, sorry. Are there other questions? Excuse me. What did I do with my water bottle? I think we have about 10 minutes left if anyone else has any questions. So Courtney is from Flo County, and so like me has been here for a while. what if you were talking to somebody who has never been to SLO, what would you say they either need to know if they're about to move here as a college student, or that you think most of, how would you describe San Luis? I know it's a tough question. I'm putting on the spot again.
Yeah, I think it's refreshingly quaint to have such a large university in it. The community's fantastic. It's kind of, how do I explain San Luis Obispo? It's a lot of college students and then a lot of retirees.
Yeah.
And not too much in the middle.
Yeah.
But there's fantastic surrounding towns. There's always things to do. If you like to go outdoors, this is going to be the perfect place for you. If you like to hike, surf, the beach is 15 minutes away. So there's a lot of opportunities here. It's not a big city, so if that's something you're looking for, I don't know if this will fulfill that for you, but I grew up local and I didn't want to leave, if that says anything about it.
It reminds me a bit of Charlottesville, which is where the University of Virginia is located, where I went to undergraduate, where it's a sort of it's a classic college town. It's 45,000 people. The county is about 250,000. So it has some of all that's good and bad about that in terms of, town gown relationships. And it's a very livable little town, but there's a lot more going on than you'd imagine in a town that size because of the university and because we're halfway between LA and San Francisco. So for instance, we get musical acts that we have no rights having come here, but because it's an easy stop between the two big cities, they often will break up the trip and do a show here. And there is that kind of funniness to the demographics. My husband calls it the demographic donut, because you have all the college kids and then you have all the retirees. We live in San Luis and both of our neighbors are retirees from LA, next door neighbors. And so, there aren't a lot of people sort of my age, but there are a lot of people college age. Let's see. So there's a question about Quarter Plus, whether or not that's going to be available online. The decision on that hasn't been made yet. They're still hoping for it to be in person, but I think there's a distinct possibility that could happen. They only just made the decision about regular summer being online about a week and a half ago. So we'll see kind of where that goes. Is it really as green? It is really that green right now. If you could see out my window, actually in my infant son's bedroom, because it's the one quiet place in the house, but you can see from here the green hills in town pretty well. It's green, but it's green like this because it's been raining. So it'll be green in the sort of winter. It's kind of late for it to have been still raining, but as long as it's raining and for about a month after it rains, it's green like Ireland. And then it's the Golden Hills of California, right? Other questions? Hopefully you do not hear my infant screaming in the background. I can hear him, but I don't think you can. He's 10 months, so it's a long time for him to be quiet. Yeah, so campus is not closed. So you absolutely can drive around, and you can drive around the local area. We've moved to a virtual teaching, obviously, but they haven't formally closed the campus. So you absolutely can drive through. There are still some students on campus. I know I haven't been to campus in a month, but the two staff people who work in the department have been going in occasionally, and they say that they see students occasionally, presumably socially distancing as they should be, but yeah, there are people around, not very many, but there are some people around, and you can certainly still drive around the area and get a feel for it. Yeah, it'll be different, obviously, but you could certainly get a feel for what the area looks like and what the campus looks like and all that. And I believe they're doing some virtual tours of dorms and so on. So hopefully you could get a sense of that online as well. Any other questions? Like I said, I do have these office hours on Wednesday morning. If you have questions, or you're welcome to email me. and I would be more than happy to address any questions that come up. I will really quickly put my email address in the chat so that you have that in case you need it. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day and that you you have good luck with your decision. Yes, so the question is whether these videos will be posted. They will be posted. My understanding is that the college and admissions will be posting them, so they should be available for you to review later. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate. It's wonderful to see that today was helpful for some of you. But I'm sort of, there are many things that I'm sad about in terms of the way we've had to be online. But one of my favorite things about April is meeting with prospective students and their parents. Usually people just wander into my office this time of year. And so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions, whether you want to Zoom or have email. If you want to email me questions, I'm always happy to answer them. And don't forget again about that information packet that's available as a PDF. There's a lot there to just kind of look at. So I hope you all have a great rest of your Saturday, and thank you to Courtney for helping out and for letting me put her on the spot. Good luck to you all. Hope to see many of you in the fall. I'll be teaching History 100, so you'll be seeing hopefully some of these names become familiar from my class roles in fall quarter. Bye-bye.